Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Steve Kinney. I'm an engineer and a producer. Thanks so much for clicking on this video and joining me on this series where we take a look extensively into Luna, where we get your session set up and we follow all the way to the end where you export your song. Now, in this video, we're going to be covering the essential steps to keep in mind when you are tracking, as well as some steps to keep in mind with session management, such as creating a track, cue mixes, shortcuts, and a little thing that UAD calls versions. Now, timestamps are available for this video, so if you want to jump around real quickly to a particular topic, just check out the description. All I ask is that you leave a like, leave a comment, let me know you were here, and subscribe to the channel. All right, without further ado, let's dive right in. Let's go. All right, so in the first video, we covered some navigation and the interface. Now we're ready to move on to creating our scratch track and building out the rest of our track in the tracking phase. In order to do that, we have to first add a track. So there's two pretty quick, simple ways to do that. We could go over to the Tracks tab over on the left-hand side and just click the plus button. Alternatively, there is a nice shortcut that I like to use. It's very handy. It's Command-Shift-N. And of course, that'll go ahead and bring up the menu to create a new track. And we're just going to title this Scratch Guitar and hit OK. Now, if you're working with another artist that is going to be performing, they may even be singing on the scratch track, so you might want to add another track. In this case, we're not going to do that. Additionally, you might want to specify what type of track, whether that's going to be a stereo or a mono track. In 9 times out of 10, you're going to be working with a mono track, but if you're working with like a piano, of course, in that scenario, you want to choose stereo. Additionally, this is a good time to keep in mind making your project really smooth and seamless by managing it as you go. So for example, we want to color coordinate our scratch tracks, color coordinate our different tracks that we have going in. And to do that, you just click on the color in the tracks folder, and then from there you would just choose a color. So we're gonna choose red for this scratch track. So now from here, we're gonna be ready to choose our input and route our sounds to our track. And to do that, you're just gonna go to the input source select, and we're gonna choose mic line high Z1, and I'm just gonna DI my acoustic guitar here. So it's at this point, you're gonna wanna enable monitoring in order to hear your source. This is also going to allow you to choose a unison plugin to choose from for your mic pre. So to do that, you would want to click the I, which stands for input monitoring. And now you can see that all of a sudden I've unlocked the ability to choose mic inputs or line inputs, 48 volts phantom power or my pad. Another really key important thing to note is that you have the ability to record effects or record things like compression, EQ, or down the list, you could monitor it inside of the Inserts panel. If you're familiar with UAD Console, you had the ability to record enable your effects or monitor enable your effects, and this is the exact same thing. It's just kind of laid out a little bit differently. All right, so I've got my guitar here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and plug into high Z1 there. Now with most projects, before you ever get to the point of where you're labeling your verses and your choruses with markers, you need to lay down that scratch track. So I'm just going to lay down something super simple and quick. Additionally, we'll demonstrate some unison effects here. So let's choose a mic pre, and let's just go with this Neve 1073. Super simple. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. I could add some compression. We could just add like a Fairchild here. Pretty straightforward. Cool, so now we've got a nice, simple, basic signal, and if we were ready to move forward, this is where we would want to lay down the guide track so that we could build the rest of the markers and prep the rest of the session for tracking. Now, one more quick, really simple shortcut to keep in mind is going to be Shift-R and Shift-T. That's going to allow you to record enable your track and arm it for recording. It's also going to enable you to arm it for input monitoring. Now let's say that I didn't want to record this Fairchild sound on the way in. All I'd have to do is just disable it, or if I wanted to keep it on there so I could hear it, what I could do is just move it down to the Inserts tab, and now it's only going to be monitoring in the signal path. So when I hit record, it doesn't doesn't keep that in that WAV file. So let's go ahead and leave it that way for now. And we'll go ahead and hit Shift R. Now we're record enabled. So from here, we are almost ready to go ahead and move forward with putting down our scratch track. But the next thing we have to talk about is cue headphone mixes and adding the click track in there as well. But before we go any further, if you've made it this far into the video and you're new to the Apollo platform, I'd encourage you to check out the new Heritage Classics pack that I just put out. It's got over 30 presets that's aimed at just getting your session running really quickly, really efficiently. It's a great way to learn signal chains that get the most from your Apollo. And it's also a really great way to support the channel. So I'd really appreciate any support you throw my way. It's how I can keep making these videos for you guys at home. Okay, so back to the video. So now that our track's record enabled, input enabled, what we can now do is also build unique individual headphone mixes. And in order to do that, let's look at the mixer view first. So in this mixer row, we've got the input, utility, master tape, inserts. We've also got sends and cues. So if I were to have, I'm gonna briefly touch on this because I'm gonna make a video later on specifically going over headphone mixes, but real simply put, what I could do is go to the cue, and in the cues panel, I have Q1 and Q2. These are my two different headphone outputs. And what I could do is push some volume into Q1. That's going to send it out into the cue there. And I'd want to make sure in my cue outputs that Q1 is not set to have the mix enabled. If I had mix enabled, that's just going to send whatever is coming out through the regular mix. Turning that off and allows me to create a separate submix just for the headphone output number 1. So now in the control room, I'm listening to the mix that's coming through on the main faders, the artist who has the headphones, and they have their own mix dialed in. Additionally, I can do that with the click track as well. What I want to do is come up to the click panel and right click on it. And now I can click on send to cues. And from there, I have the ability to change the amount that I'm sending into Q1. Alternatively, I could just turn it on to the main monitor tab, and now that's going to allow me to hear it through the mains, through the monitors, as well as the headphones as well. I also have the ability in here to have count-in bars or pre-roll bars. It's always a good idea to do that when you're tracking. That way you give yourself a little bit of extra room. So if someone comes in right on a downbeat, you're going to make sure that you have that captured. So let's jump back into the timeline real quick. And what we would do is before we go any further, I would hit Function Enter, and I'm going to go ahead and create my first marker. And I'm just going to type in pre-roll. I'll choose a color. I can make it any color I want. I'm just going to go with gray. Hit enter. And now I'm going to come to bar 3. So now I'm going to come to bar 3 and add one more marker, and it's going to be called intro. And we'll just make it yellow. So what I can do from here is I've manually created a pre-roll. It's a very easy way to do that. Or I could also just come up to this count in bars and add in however many that I'd want. For right now, I'm just going to turn off the count in bars since I created my own manual pre-roll. And so from here, I'm ready to record my scratch track. To record the scratch track, what I could do is I come up here and I can hit the record enable button, and then I could just hit play. Alternatively, the shortcut that I like to use is function command spacebar. So now that we're ready to record, let's just lay down something really simple over top of this, just to kind of go through the motions of showing you how I would lay out some sections here. Perfect. Okay, so we've got two different little rhythmic patterns there, and one would be like a chorus or one would be like a bridge, you know, just something to make it sound a little bit different here. And we've got our intro, so let's listen back to this. So we'll turn off input monitoring now, Shift T, and let's just listen back. Cool, so right here at bar 7, This is going to be a new section here, so let's hit Shift Enter and just call this chorus, and let's create a new color. Boom, cool. All right, so we've got our different sections here, and we've remembered our good guidelines with session management, which is color coding, making sure everything's really highly organized. If I had a scratch vocal, let's just go ahead and create that right now. I want to show you guys one more thing. So now that I've got my scratch vocal, I'm going to color coordinate it the same as my scratch guitar, because it's just going to symbolize and let me know that this is a scratch track. And what I could finally do is group these together. So I could highlight both tracks and I could choose Command G. Creating groups is really important. For example, you could group together all of your drums, and this is going to allow you to make all of your edits and your cuts to all of those tracks simultaneously at the same time. So we're going to name this the scratch group and hit OK, and you can see that's now reflected in the group panel. Finally, the very last thing that's really important to know is track versions. Now, I'm not going to dive into track versions entirely in this video. We'll cover that at a later video, but just know that if I wanted to have a second take of this scratch guitar, what I would do is I would make sure that I have my track versions enabled, and I would add a new version. That would allow me to create comps for vocals or create a comp of multiple passes from, say, a guitar performance. Now, we will cover that later on in the series, so be sure to follow along. One more final thought in the tracking phase. One pro tip that I will leave you guys is that I really like to use bookmarks. After I'm done tracking, what I like to do is go through, make all the final edits, create any fades, the really simple edits that you can do on the fly really quickly. And before I'm done with whatever session I'm working on, I'll create a bookmark. Now, if you're not familiar with what bookmarks are, I covered them in the first video in the series, but just as a refresher, just think of bookmarks like an actual bookmark. If you're reading a book, it's just a placeholder to finalize your work in the moment and give you a place to start off from the next time you open your session, or it gives you a place to revert to a previous version in your session. So now that we've covered the essentials of tracking, now you'd be able to go forward and build out the rest of your song, build your markers, lay down all of the other tracks that you need for your session. Once you're done tracking, now you're gonna be ready for editing. So be sure to check out part 3 in this series, where we dive into editing, comping, and dealing with warp audio. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment below. Let me know you stopped by. If you'd like to work with me directly, you can reach out to me on Instagram at @TheSteveKinney. And for more ways to support the channel, be sure to check out thestevekinney.com, where I have the New Heritage Classics pack, which is available now. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you in the next video.